Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, a little bit of laughter, and everything you need because, as we know, divorce happens and then you start fresh. And we're here with one of our fresh starts experts we love, Allison. Allison, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Hi, sure. Thank you for having me, Olivia. So, my name's Allison McFadden. I've been working with families going through divorce for almost 15 years now. I started my career as a family law attorney, working at a traditional law firm for the first 10 years before I really decided I wanted to work with families in a different way outside of the courtroom. And so I started my own practice where now I work one on one with individuals doing coaching nationwide, as well as doing legal consulting for folks who are local here in Maryland. And then I also work with couples to help them reach agreements from parenting plans to financial agreements, child support, anything that needs to be resolved as part of their family.
So much important stuff that you do because none of that you mentioned anybody can actually do by themselves. So if you're listening to this and you need the support, reach out to Allison. I send my own friends to Allison, so you know that must mean that we trust and adore like all of our fresh starts experts. Okay, Allison, speaking of my own friends, um I am often, not shockingly, the person that a lot of people come to now when they're like, I'm considering a divorce, but I don't know where to get started. And I
Right.
think that this is the place that a lot of people get really stopped up, right? Like
Yeah.
I know what a divorce is. I want that divorce thing. How the heck do I even get started on this process? And so
Yeah.
I want you to really take us through, like, if you are somebody that is listening to this and you're like, I've been considering divorce for a while. 2025 is going to be my year for this. Where do you even get started?
Sure. Yeah, it's really hard to know what to do first, where to look for information, who to trust. And, I find that lots of times people, as they're thinking about divorce, they keep finding themselves in these kind of like catch 22s as they're trying to think through the process. Like,
Mm,
questions about like, where am I going to live? Well, how do I know where I'm going to be able to afford to live until I figure out support, and how am I going to figure out how much support I need until I figure
yeah.
out where I'm going to live? And so it's kind of
Yeah.
these like circular questions and things that are
Totally.
spinning around
Totally.
in people's
Yeah.
minds.
Yep.
So I like to tell people to start by trying to think ahead to where they want to be at the end of this process. And start with that. Start with what they are thinking that they want their life to look like. Try to write it down in as much detail as you can. Go through that kind of exercise. And if you're working with, this is a great place if you're working with a coach to or a therapist to kind of get that down on paper and think that through, because then you can back up and think to yourself,
Mm,
okay, how do I get there? What is that process going to look like? How am I going to be able to get myself to that place? And that's where then you can kind of start coming up with a roadmap, trying to figure out,
mm,
okay, what do I need? What help do I need? What professionals might I need to talk to? What friends do I have that have gone through this process who might be able to
right.
give me some information? And again, having a coach who might be able to help you think through some of
Yeah.
these different areas is lots of times a great place to start, because it's not just one thing you're thinking about. You're not just thinking about the legal aspect, you're likely thinking about the financials, what impact it might have on your career, if you
Mhm.
have kids, how is this going to impact the kids? There's so many different areas to think about that it's not, a one-stop solution for most people. And I think
Yeah.
the kind of traditional advice or logic of, we'll go talk to an attorney, for a lot of people isn't necessarily the best first step, right?
That's scary as
Um,
hell. Yeah.
Scary as hell, and it's really only like addressing one particular
Mm.
area of
Mhm.
divorce in the whole process.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people find also that like the legal system isn't necessarily the avenue where they're really going to be making a lot of changes and seeing that they're able to achieve a lot of those goals that they might be thinking of.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
so I think people kind of broadening that view from the traditional avenues of just, I'm going to go get an attorney and file for divorce, but thinking about what they want their life to look like at the end of that process. And then also starting to consider like the different processes and how they're going to get there.
Mhm. Mhm. So I love everything you said for so many reasons. I remember distinctly, like, a couple days after my ex-husband and I separated, going to one of my older son was in kindergarten at the time, and going in to see him do a kindergarten play, and I was just weeping because I was like, "I love his school. I don't wanna leave the district. Where am I gonna go?" And I remember it was all those same thoughts, right? It was like, I'm gonna ruin his life. He's not gonna grow up with these kids, right? And of course, like, to take a step back, like, many things can change the course of our life, right? Not just
Right.
divorce.
Yeah.
But I think you make such a good point with like calling the divorce lawyer and how that's actually like a piece of the pie, right? And so the reason we built Fresh Starts and the thing that I learned through my divorce was that you have a lot of people that you need, right, on your team. So I always recommend to a friend going through a divorce, therapist and divorce coach, right? Like those two go hand in hand to me because as I learn more about the divorce industry and process and the legal world of divorce, I can't imagine going through it without a divorce coach.
Yeah.
So if you could take a second, Allison, and just tell us a little bit about like what you do with clients or what, like, if anybody's listening to this or like, well, I don't have extra money to spend on a divorce coach, like that would be a great place to save your and spend your money with a divorce coach. Save it other places, spend it on the divorce coach. So what does a divorce coach do that maybe like you're not going to get in any other part of this process?
Sure. Yeah. I think if you're able to afford a divorce coach and get that help up front, I think a lot of people find that it ends up saving the money down the long in the long run.
It does, you're right.
Generally,
Yeah.
yeah, a coach is likely going to be at a lower rate, less expensive than an attorney. They're going to be able to
Mhm.
give you kind of that sense of the divorce process, though, and they're likely going to look at it from a much more holistic view than just focusing on the legal aspect.
Right.
But with my divorce coaching clients, a lot of times if we're at that beginning of the divorce process, we start with that visualization using different exercises to come up with what they want that end
Yeah.
result kind of to look
Yeah.
like, knowing that, right, we might have to pivot, that we might have
Yeah.
to be open to changes, but at least that gives us something to kind of ground us towards what we're working towards.
Mhm.
And then another thing I like to do with clients at the beginning is come up with kind of what I call like a divorce mission statement, where we're really identifying the things that are really important to them. So,
I
like you
love that.
mentioned, maybe stability for your kids, keeping them in the same environment. And then
Right.
writing down, like, what does that stability mean? Does it mean
Right.
keeping them in the same school? Does it mean making sure that they're able to stay in a religious setting or a church where they have community, but figuring out what that
Mhm.
means for you, because
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
looks different for everybody, right? And once you
Yeah.
have those goals in mind, you're better able to figure out where you want to put your energy instead of trying to spread yourself thin, attacking all of these different areas that come up as part of
Yeah.
the divorce process. But divorce coaches really they have the knowledge of the whole divorce process as opposed to just focusing on maybe the legal aspect or the financial aspect, but more
Yeah.
so the whole picture,
Yeah.
and can give
Yeah.
you and help you, like, again, come up with that roadmap in terms of getting organized, getting prepared, so that once you move into whether it's the legal side of the divorce or mediation, if that's the route that you're going,
Mhm. Mhm.
you are better prepared and hopefully able to move forward a little bit more efficiently with some of those other professionals.
Totally, 100%. And I think, like, I've heard from every divorce coach we have at Fresh Starts that I've talked to, it does save you money down the
Yeah.
line for sure. And I think it makes sense, right? Because you're, let's just take it, a lot of lawyers are hundreds of dollars an hour, right? If people don't know that. And so if you're calling your lawyer or sending your lawyer an email that is like an emotional email, right? Or a scattered email or all over the place, that's going to take a lot more time for them to handle and deal with. And your lawyer's job is not to deal with you emotionally,
Yeah.
right? And so working with a divorce coach or somebody like you, Allison, is like, which obviously you do a lot of divorce coaching within your business, and along with the legal stuff too. And I think which is amazing, is like you have somebody there that's going to guide you and make that plan, that roadmap, like you said. And for me, that roadmap takes away like 90% of the anxiety,
Yeah.
right? Because then you know what's going to be coming up down the pike. So where do you work? How do you work? If somebody's listening to this and they're like, I need, my sister needs you, I need you, whatever it
Sure,
is.
sure. I just want to quickly piggyback off of something you said because
Yeah.
the idea of going to your attorney for some of these like emotional issues.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, as a former litigator, as an attorney, I can tell you when you go to your attorney with those issues, lots of times they're in that legal mind. They're thinking,
Yeah.
oh, you guys can't get along at pickup. Let's file a motion. Let's fire off a nasty letter. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily the approach that it's going to that is going to get you the results you want in the long run. And so I think it is really important to kind of have at least somebody who you can talk to get that more holistic view and not just focused on like, let's go to court. What can we get in court? And kind of always taking that path.
Yeah, and I
So
wanted to
yeah,
say I appreciate you saying that. And also, like, from a mindset perspective, like when you go through a divorce, as you know, right, you're kind of like cut down to ground zero emotionally and confidence wise. And there's a big difference between calling a divorce lawyer weeping and going like, and he blah 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 blah, and then they're like, okay, and you're like, well, do I not matter? Do my feelings not matter? Right? Opposed to calling somebody like you, Allison, and you're like, okay, let's figure this out together. Take a
yeah,
breath. Right? That's not your lawyer's job, and I remember going through my divorce, and I'd be like, why don't they respond quickly, and why don't they care about this? And my sister kept saying to me, this is their job, they do this with hundreds of clients every single day. They're not going to take 2 seconds to calm you down because you're having a
yeah,
meltdown, like, and I love my divorce lawyer, she was wonderful, but I remember
yeah,
her even saying like, you got to call me back when you're calmed down, right? Like, it was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's too much. So hire a divorce coach, reach out to Allison. I mean, that's, I think divorce coaches are the most underutilized aspect of divorce, across the board. So that being said, Allison, do you work nationally if somebody's listening, or globally?
Yep, yep. So I take divorce coaching clients from all over. You can go to my website, divorcebyallison.com, and schedule a free 20-minute consult to
Amazing.
see if we're a good fit. So I work with divorce coaching. I do co-parenting coaching for folks who might be on the other side of the
Mm,
divorce process, but are still working on figuring out that new relationship. And then I also work with clients in Maryland as a consulting attorney. So I don't litigate at all anymore. I really only work with folks outside of court, but I help them draft and negotiate settlement agreements and do things like that, as well as I do mediate all over the country as well.
amazing.
So you can, again, go to my website and schedule a free 20-minute call to learn more about my services and see if we're a good fit.
You do so many things. You're like all over the divorce industry, Allison. I have one question before we I have two questions for you. One is like, if somebody's listening to this, what would be the, and they're considering divorce, but they haven't taken a step, what would be the next like active move? And it can be something super small for them to do at this moment.
Sure. I think I think doing that visualization, what do you want things to look like? And you don't have to spend, 20 minutes an hour. It can literally just be taking a scrap of paper that you have and
Mm,
writing down, jotting down some things, or drawing a picture, doing something that gives you a visualization that then you can start working towards.
and get in touch with Allison for your
Yeah,
20-minute free consult.
absolutely.
Allison, if if somebody is listening to this, going through that a divorce or considering a divorce, what would be some words of encouragement that you could leave with them as somebody that does this all day for a job?
Sure. This isn't forever. This is a process, and it's going to get better as you move through it. It's not easy, and it's not going to necessarily be something that is enjoyable, but there is an end goal on the other side. And And once you get there, you can look back and see the growth that you had during this journey and know that you can do hard things, right? We're
Mhm.
we're always going to be tackling challenges in our life, and so this is a time where you can build your confidence and look to the future.
I love it. I love it. Well, you can find Allison and get in touch with her over at Fresh Starts Registry in the expert guide. Allison, we're so thrilled that you're part of Fresh Starts and supporting people in all of these ways that you do. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.